Bam! Do that intro.
How about you are? This is John Leon Guerrero here with Pete A. Turner, and you are watching the Break It Down
The
show.
Break It Down show. We've not done one of these in ages, man.
It's been a while. I'm a cat
Yeah.
buster.
Hey, there's Buster.
Yeah, he's doing his thing. So
And we started this shit a long time ago, and we haven't done one of these in a long, long time.
it's been a while.
It's way too long.
Yeah.
You were going to say something. I cut you off.
Well, I was just going to say that I didn't even, you'd mentioned, hey, let's log on and do a podcast. We had no discussion about topic, no discussion about anything. It had just been long enough that it was just needed to be done. So
yeah,
here we
done
are.
and overdue. Yeah, so here we are doing it. Where have we been?
Wow, that's a. I was just looking at some pictures the other day because I was watching my good friend Freddie Ross last night. He's a singer, a magnificent singer, and they were doing a Sly Stone song. So naturally, I'm sitting with my friend Rick, and I said, "Hey, let me show you this picture." I show him the picture of us with Sly Stone, and of course, he looks at it. And he goes, "Golly, Sly looks terrible," and he did that day. Hopefully, he's better now. I hear he's all cleaned up, but it just gave me a reason to go through some of the old pictures, us throughout the podcast journey from the beginning. I mean, we came right out of the gate with some fantastic guests. Our first trip to LA, when you still lived up here, I think we might have had 7 or 8 episodes in the can. And we had started an interaction with Jay Moore. And I remember we were at the Anderson pea soup place getting a bite to eat at the halfway point on our way down to LA for our first trip. And that was the first time he had interacted with us. And we were super excited with 7 episodes in the can. And then by the time we got him on the show, it was our second trip to LA. And I don't remember what episode that was where we said, hey, we started this show really to some degree modeling it after his podcast, More Stories. Yeah. And then here we were sitting in it was the Fox Sports studio. And, talking about whatever we were talking about.
But we've done this story, a version of it, hundreds of times now.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, J.R. Robinson offered us cookies when we sat and did the show across his kitchen countertop.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and to say now that, we are friends with so many of these people who we thought, oh man, that would be a dream guest. I couldn't imagine that we'd ever in a million years have J.R. Robinson on the show. And not only that, but yeah, here we are, he's putting out a tray of cookies and peanuts for us while we sit at his house. And, we've since become friends. I mean,
yeah,
if we call him, I haven't called him in a minute, but last time I called him, he answers the phone. Hey, John.
Yeah.
And this is my childhood hero.
Yeah. He took the time to type your name into his phone, and your name is long.
Yeah. The other thing is his.
Yeah.
I posted something the other day, and I don't remember what it was. I think it was like a picture from a gig or something. And, it was a neat picture. So a lot of people click the like button, and everybody likes likes. So I looked down at the list of likes, and among them is J.R. Robinson. And here I am, I'm just looking at all the people who are on the list of likes, and many of them are drummers, because I think it was a picture of like my drum set before the gig. I was like, here's my office for tonight or whatever. And I just thought, all the drummers who are on this, who clicked like on this picture, I wonder how many of them know that among them is, one of the true greats of the art form.
Yeah.
And like you said, we've done a version of that story in practically every imaginable, call it genre, whether it's every imaginable discipline, whether it's, um, music, comedy,
Yeah.
filmmaking. I mean, we've had a Kennedy.
It's almost comical,
Yeah.
We've had a Kennedy more than once,
Right.
and they said, hang in there. Yeah, we know we're going to do it for sure.
Yeah.
And then they got a hold of us to do it. Right. It's so,
And, um, there have been truly meaningful conversations,
yeah.
so it's one thing to say, oh yeah, we had a Kennedy on. It's not like they did a flyby. Like, we broke down the first time she was on, we did a comprehensive breakdown of her filmography. And then the second time, most recently when she was on, she and her husband, who was her producing partner, were, I'd like to say that we gave them the opportunity to explore what it was that they were after in ways that, I mean, a lot of podcasts have more time than a TV interview, so you can go more
Right.
places. But, not only do we have a little more time, but between the two of us, we've had pretty interesting lives and some interesting successes and some wildly interesting failures. And
Boy, have we.
yeah, and we can relate to artistic struggles in a different way. And I think that's really one of the things that sets us apart from other interviewers. And I'm not taking anything away from other interviewers, because there are plenty of guys who have, podcasts or YouTube shows where I will watch and become a, loyal fan, like Rick Beato.
Yeah.
I like to think, as a working musician, I get into the weeds with working musicians pretty well. But a guy like Rick, I watched his interview with Kip Winger the other day. And it's different for me to say, man, here I am in J.R. Robinson's house. I sat down and played his drum set or whatever. Kip Winger said, years ago, Rick, I don't know if you remember this, but I took a lesson from you. So, there are plenty of people out there who are doing good work. But I think that our show, I mean, he's had a career in music that's storied and focused and all that stuff. But we've done so many things between the two of us that we can go pretty deep.
Yeah.
In a whole lot of places.
Yeah. Yeah. We had Andrew Friedman on the show. He's worked with Kobe Bryant. He is the NBA photographer. He was on the field as Kirk Gibson was pumping his fist in '88, taking pictures. This is a substantial dude.
Yeah.
And he was, but he starts out as like this Jewish college kid who loves sports on the East Coast. And somehow I know to say, but how did you get from the East Coast to here? I get that you saw a billboard and you got inspired once you got here, but how did you go from college to here? And he's like, oh, right. My sister was in Greece. She was Frenchy, and I came out to hang out with her and sleep on her couch. That's when I saw the billboard. And that extra question, that thing to know, like, because you and I oftentimes think about the logistics or the other, like that middle step where it's like, then you saw the billboard and were inspired, but that billboard's across the country. We know to fill that gap.
Yeah. Huh. This is my favorite Graceland coffee mug. Not to shift gears that hard on you, but I'm just looking at this picture of Graceland and thinking about how Graceland, I don't know. I also consume a lot of content about architecture and building because I'm a builder. But Graceland is like, it's really just the nice house that a dentist would own.
Right.
It's not like you wouldn't, if you went into a rapper's house and it looked like Graceland, you'd be like, is this your mom's house? Or
It's kind of dinky.
Yeah. Where do you keep the lion?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's not even, you just walk in and there's a staircase right there. And it's like, okay, this would be nice for like your daughter going to the prom, taking a picture of her coming down the stairs. But it's not like it's not a,
Right.
Busby Berkeley double staircase that you would do dance numbers down or anything.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. But at the time, that was a mansion. So what were people living in?
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
I mean, the
I-
Ryan's house, many houses in Danville,
Mhm. Yeah,
gigantic
are much
compared to
more
that.
impressive. I mean, entire tracts of thousands of houses in Danville.
Right.
Production houses, semi-custom production houses, where every one
Right.
of them is more impressive than Graceland.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Times change.
Yeah. Times change. Yeah. Yeah. Is our show, what is our show about? What do you think? I mean, I don't even know how many episodes you even watch or pay attention to anymore, but what is our show about?
Well, I think that's been the great struggle of our show, is that we didn't know when we were so early in the podcast game that we didn't know that, hey, maybe you ought to define this thing.
Yeah.
And Joe Rogan never defined his podcast, but it sort of came to define itself. And and his trajectory is, you can't compare that to anything else,
Right.
because he had a level of celebrity and fame that
Yeah.
fed into the popularity of him having a long form conversation. But
Let me expand that though, because it's easy to kind of forget. So he was a national level comedian who is now starting to host TV shows, national TV shows. And then he attached himself to one of the biggest entertainment brands, not at the time, but now in the
Right.
world. So as
Yeah.
that brand exploded worldwide,
Yeah.
he was there with it. That's
He was uniquely positioned too in that
Yeah.
in that world. He did the first 3 of those for free. The
yeah.
first
Yeah.
3 UFC events that he hosted, he just Dana White flew him out there, and he
Yeah.
just did it because he was uniquely qualified to do it. He had the polish and the presence as a comedian
Right.
to actually pull off the technical part of it. But then he also had the fight knowledge. And
He was so much better than Jim Brown, who was
Yeah.
the first guy to really do it. And you're like, Jim Brown doesn't know what he's talking about. He doesn't know what a Kimura versus an Americana, hold is. He doesn't know those things.
Right. It also had never been kicked in the face.
Right. Doesn't have a
And-
world-class back kick.
Right. Yes.
All these things. Yeah.
So, that for us, being such generalists, I don't know that that it has found its place. And as I think about these things, I think less about, well, what's the show about, and trying to define it, because I think it's, by definition, it lacks definition. It's almost like you, and I'll say this about you specifically, your I think the thing that's going to stand out about you, and I hope that it stands out while we're still alive, is that you refuse to be defined in that way. So is it going to be the show that everybody starts to recognize for being like, this is Pete, he'll do anything, as opposed to those shows that were about such a specific thing that it had an instant tribe, and that those tribes didn't have anything else and they could attach to that thing?
Yeah.
I don't know the answer to that question. What do you think about it?
Well, I mean, obviously, it's an exploration. And I always like, yeah, and folks love to tell you that the thing they'll ask you, like, what's the show about? And so then you tell them the catchphrase,
Hmm.
and then they're like, no, that's not good enough. And you're like, what would you like it to be then?
Right.
Like, you please, enlighten me. And
Yeah.
so, and I know you know this phrase, but like interesting people doing fascinating things, but that apparently wasn't good enough for people. And so I just started saying it's about life,
Mm.
and life is defined by what life is defined by.
Yeah.
And one of the elements of the show is if something scares the hell out of me, I typically do it.
Yeah.
Not
You
always.
probably should lean into it.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, oh, that topic is scary. Let's get someone on about that show.
Mm.
And when I sense bullshit, I get someone on and talk about that topic,
Yeah.
because I'd rather have an honest conversation with someone about something that's challenging than to just let someone ape and spew. Like, no, let's really get in there. And not like Mike Wallace, where I'm pointing a finger and challenging. But no, like hear someone out and ask them fair questions.
Hmm.
But like let them be the expert. Have experts on who disagree with one another in an intelligent way. I mean, I think that's all part of that. Like, make this thing a little bit uncomfortable so that we can have a great conversation. This next week, I think it's this next week coming up, I've got Sebastian Younger coming back on the show, and his latest book is, I don't know if you've read it yet, but it's incredible. It's about dying and near death experiences. And I've got Josh Montz coming on, who's getting a PhD in this stuff. For those who don't know, Josh Montz was dead for 12 minutes before they brought him back. And these are fascinating conversations. And so I'm going to put these two dudes in on the show, and I'm going to shut up and I'm going to let them talk about what only they can talk about. I mean, I've got
Hmm.
no business even other than just saying, thanks for coming on the show, fellas, and
Yeah.
pointing at them. I'm not
Yeah.
going to do much else, right? Because that's one of the things we do is we're not afraid. I don't know. I speak for you, Vince. You're not afraid to have that conversation. You're not afraid to bring in that other musician, that other person, that not even necessarily a counterpoint, but just someone to create some tension in that conversation, healthy tension in that conversation. And these are things that are elements of the show that aren't driven by topic. It's driven by how do you take this conversation and make it better? You add this other person's point of view, and we wrestle with this complicated thing.
Hmm. Yeah. And it's not, it's not wrestling for the sake of the wrestling. It's
Right.
wrestling to challenge an area of the topic that, deserves some further exploration or, or more attention. And I
Yeah.
don't think that, having these two guys on who are exploring a topic that I'm sure everybody is curious about, but so few people actually have any experience with. That's not certainly not something for the sake of tension. It's something for the sake of viewpoints that are so unusual
Mm.
and putting these guys in a position where they can explore. I mean, Sebastian Younger took up boxing at age 50.
Yeah.
So does the topic of death, um, I don't want to say that he's out there thrill seeking to the point where, of course, he's interested in the topic of death or
Right.
anything. I mean, anything morbid like that. But he is definitely a guy who is unafraid. And like you just said, he'll take something that is a lot for most people, too much for most people,
Yeah.
and fully explore it. And people like that should be celebrated. So interesting
Yeah.
people doing fascinating things, that describes Sebastian Younger for sure, and it's why we're such fans of his, and have been, and continue to be
Yeah.
such fans of his. But um, being about life, that's pretty accurate because life defines definition.
Mhm.
I think humankind, let's say humankind has been conscious of life and death for, who knows, 500,000 years. And in that 500,000 years, nobody solved that riddle, but we continue to explore it because, it's so much more complicated than we are. So, yeah.
And the other thing is we get access to some incredible stories. And right now I'm thinking about Buddy Levy, who writes these incredible books. He wrote one about this from the like the end of the great age of exploration. In the early 1900s. This guy who's part of that community, well credentialed, so that he can get governments to give him money and boats. And he's like, I'm going to go up to the North Pole and go do some exploring. And here are the goals. And they're like, yeah, you know what? That sounds impossible and hard and deadly. Why don't you go do that? Here's a bunch of resources.
Yeah.
And, he goes and instantly, because this shit's hard, all chaos breaks out. It just goes crazy from the beginning. And so one of his ship captains is completely separated from the group. And he's got a bunch of scientists on there, and they're beset in ice in the North and on the Arctic Ocean. And they're like, what are we going to do? And it's movie grade stuff.
Yeah.
It's stuff that makes you want to go to the top of the world and just see this thing. And there's nothing up there to go see, but it just inspires you,
Yeah.
and just to see the test of the human spirit. They brought a kitty cat along on this trip, by the way, and they cover thousands of miles and they don't have any food. And there's a cat along with it the entire way, so there's all this crazy humanity that happens in the book's called Empire of Ice and Stone. It's fantastic. And so not enough people could read this book, especially dudes. Like if you were like we'll talk about Brian Fuller here in a minute, but if you're someone like Brian or someone who likes these kinds of things, you should know this story. It's incredible.
Yeah.
But not enough people get on these things. And so I love finding these kind of people who do this kind of work. It's like, you need to hear about this person because the unusual is in fact not usual. And so you hear about these people that do something that's outside of the normal scope of life. That shit fascinates me.
Also, why?
Yeah.
Except for the fuck of it.
Yeah. 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 Whatever it is, right? Like we can talk about the usual all the time. We can talk about whatever politics or whatever it is, but I'd rather, and sure, let's talk about politics, but let's also talk about all the other things that happen in life that are worth like examining and saying, wow, this person did this amazing thing. Just think about that. And I think there's so much richness in that. And it's not banal. Talking about Ken Griffey Jr. and how great his swing was over and over and over and over and over and over again. I don't know. We can do better than that.
Mm-hmm. It was a great swing.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, there are a lot of interesting things to explore that are not the usual, and a lot of things get attention for being in those algorithmic lanes, and
right.
I don't know, like, politics, for instance. I'm really suffering from politics fatigue. I am just tired. My ears are tired. My face is tired. I'm tired of politics being in my face because there are so many people out there who, I listen to the things that people say or that they spew or the opinions that they express, and everybody's entitled to their opinion, but so often, so often, a lot of times, because we've had guests on the show who were so close to very specific things, I will read or hear somebody say something and I will think, you know what? You have no idea.
Yeah.
You have no idea. And it's just gotten to the point where I'm just like, I'm just not interested in hearing anybody's opinion about it, because most people's opinion is based on nothing,
Yeah. I had a state representative from Nevada, and the first thing I'll say is I don't care about what your representative thinks, does, needs. Not my representative, so really not my problem. That's like, so I don't care if you're from New York or Florida, whatever it is. But in this case, it was about the A's, and all these angry A's fans were bashing her on Twitter. And that's when the bullshit detector goes off. So I'm like, let me just get her on the show and have a normal conversation with someone and just ask her what it's like to be a rep. One of the things you find out is that they they have a biannual legislative cycle. So if they don't fix something in that 2-year cycle, doesn't get fixed for a
Yeah.
long time. And so there's only so many things they can do. They really aren't paid at all. There might be some money for some staff, some stipends, that kind of thing, but they're doing this because they want to do it.
Yeah.
And it really changes how you think about, they all have other jobs.
Mhm.
And so trying to master whatever the topic is that they're trying to use and run the state legislatively,
Yeah.
it's an enormous task to do for free in part-time and stick the landing every other year.
Uh-huh.
That,
It's a
that
lot
was the
like
biggest.
exploring that part of the earth that nobody's been to, and you're like, why?
Yeah, yeah,
This makes no sense
yeah,
until it, and you realize that, hey, somebody's, answering a calling,
yeah.
and those callings, they're underappreciated and should be admired. But okay, so what are the takeaways from the conversation?
Well, one, she's not an idiot, right? She's well educated, and that's a common theme. When people say someone's stupid, and you don't have to agree with her. She left California. There's a lot of California exiles out there that are disappointed in what California's become.
Mhm.
That is a reasonable and rational opinion. You don't have to hold it, but you can say, "I understand."
And for a variety of reasons.
For a variety of reasons, right? And I'm in Las Vegas. We compete hard for things. We're a world-class city. We draw people from everywhere.
Mhm.
Right. So we're going to play hard. And politics, as we all know, can be ugly. And so all of these things go into that, and we have to constantly push the boundaries of what it takes to get people to come here. That is how we get to be a nice place to live. And so we talked about all these things. And when you hear that, you're like, yeah,
Sure is too.
yeah, it's wonderful there, right? And they do things bigger and better. Was F1 perfect? No. But how impossible is it to build a Formula One track on the Vegas Strip for
In
the
the
first
middle
time?
of the busiest city. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And by the way, they pulled it off, and F1 was like, this is an incredible event. So now they can go back and see what they can improve it. That's a normal thing to say. So yes, it was a smash. They took one of the slowest weekends of the year, and by some numbers, is the biggest weekend of the year.
Yeah.
Was it expensive? Fuck yes. Europe's big show came here. That's not cheap. This
No.
is stuff that celebrities come to. So
Yeah.
all of these little complaints and everything.
Yeah.
This lady's doing her job by getting Formula One there. She's
No
bringing tax revenue there. Are they going to improve it? Yeah, it'll be better next year. They'll get better at access. They'll, just like anything.
It'll be better managed. The
Right.
flow will be better.
Yeah. And so when you hear that, you understand that, like, yes, like anything else. And she even said, like, I've made some mistakes in understanding what the bond measure that's going to give the A's some money. I made some mistakes on what that was there for. She had the courage to say that. Tell me a politician that has the courage to say, oh, I misunderstood part of this bond measure.
Mhm.
Still going to have the A's here.
Yeah.
But and the money is still going to come because guess what? And one of the things, and this remains true, and then I'm going to get off the A's, but all the A's fans who are mad at the A's and won't go to A's games, I'll make the A's show up right now when we're in Las Vegas. We'll have all of the top Oakland acts play a package show. We'll have two short, and we talked about this off mic, but you just put the right package together and you'll fill that house. And if shitty people don't want to come and be shitty about things, then they won't come. But there's a lot of people that will come and see Too Short and Sheila E.
Well, let's
come on.
let's explore this for a minute, because not everybody heard this offline conversation, and it's worth hearing. There's a message out there that says that if the A's, having abandoned Oakland, go to Las Vegas, the Oakland fans will not follow. And so I think, if I'm to summarize the point that you just made, first thing is, nobody cares, because Las Vegas will develop its own following of its own fans. The A's will be fine there.
Yeah.
Second thing is, that's just not true, because I have one son who's Herb's he's a diehard Raiders fan.
Right.
And he's been to games in Las Vegas because they went there. So his whole crew who would go to Raiders games,
Right.
packed up and spent on
Yeah.
going to Vegas for a weekend. And then they made it a Vegas weekend and a Raiders weekend. And not one of them was sorry about it. And the whole experience of the new stadium and the whole everything about it
Yeah.
was well executed. And it was, the fact that it was a Raiders weekend and a Vegas weekend just made it like they were worn out when they came back for all the right reasons.
Yeah.
So they're now able to enjoy their fandom of the team in a way that they never could have
Yeah.
when the Raiders were here in Oakland. The Oakland experience that we described putting together. So they're afraid of not having Oakland come to a Vegas A's game. We were talking about putting together an entertainment package that included Sheila E. and Too
Yeah.
Short.
Sure.
Maybe the hieroglyphics. I mean,
Sure.
this would just be like the High Road Digital Underground Too Short
Yeah.
weekend. And if you're in Oakland, it's like, well, I think I'd better go to that. Or you could make it old school and make it be the Whispers and Sheila E. and
Yeah.
You can't say people won't come.
You can also just make it the Bay, because that's really what the Oakland A's represent. And you could have a package show with Metallica and Tesla.
Yeah.
Just
and center it around a homestand against the Giants.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. It's
There's just too much. There are too many possibilities.
Yeah. I'm not worried about the A's selling tickets in Vegas. I'm not worried about Vegas drawing a crowd. They're doing this for a reason. They're the biggest. They're the show business capital of the world. They know how to do all this stuff. And so when you have Danielle on the show and she's talking about these things, these are professional people at entertainment and tourism. You know who's not good at tourism? Oakland, Alameda County. Right. Yeah. So, and look, that's fine. They get to be good at what they're good at. And Oakland is good at certain things and Vegas is good at certain things. But
What's Oakland good at? And I'm speaking as a person who loves Oakland. I have a love affair with Oakland.
I love Oakland too.
We've had some great times in Oakland.
Yeah. Oakland has a rich culture. And it definitely, like Vegas, booms and busts. But when it seems like
it doesn't boom like Vegas.
It doesn't boom like Vegas. but the area booms in a bigger way. The Bay Area does. But when Oakland busts, it does seem to plant seeds that germinate wonderful things, like Larry Batiste, like Tony.
Yeah.
Like, I'm gonna say Beyonce, right? She's got her own version of Oakland roots. She's not from Oakland, but she's got Oakland roots, right?
Oakland roots she doesn't even really acknowledge, and she doesn't have to, but
it doesn't have to, but they exist.
Yeah.
And so we have these things, Zendaya, all these different, and I'm just talking music stuff, right?
Yeah.
How about the athletes? And I'll throw Alameda in there, but there's so many athletes, especially baseball players, good grief, that are fantastic and from the area. So there's a lot of things. There's a lot of other media artists that are good at all of that. So there's plenty of that stuff, but that richness, I think, this is just Pete saying this, comes in part from the struggle that comes from that Oakland being Oakland, and then there's the beauty that comes out of expressing that.
Yeah. Well, okay. That may be why one of the reasons we love Oakland.
Yeah.
But when it comes to the administration of things, those same sorts of pitfalls that create the cultural richness sometimes get in the way of, operating, competing on the level that Vegas does on the world stage.
Yeah, without a doubt. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
and Oakland's not that big of a place.
Right.
I mean, if you want to go measure it in terms of cities, it's just not that big of a place. And Oakland is big next to a lot of other places, but those places aren't Oakland.
Yeah.
So Walnut Creek is not Oakland. They aren't that far apart.
Yeah.
Berkeley is certainly not Oakland. They are not that far apart. So, by the way, the Bay is really nice in general. and it's
Mhm.
part of that. So I don't know. Anyhow, I love being from the Bay. I love being born in Oakland. I love all of my Oakland roots. My dad lived in East Oakland,
Yeah.
so you, you and I have been all over Oakland doing stuff.
Yep.
And Oakland, there's parts of
Yeah.
Oakland I even know people.
Well, I remember we were talking about a restaurant that no longer exists that we
Yeah,
frequented, and the kind of restaurant it was, you wouldn't think that we would frequent that place.
yeah.
And then somebody else who would be more closely aligned with having their celebrity be welcomed in that place uh, actually said, "You guys eat there? I don't go there."
Yeah. My dad worked at Division II AC Transit. That's in East Oakland. That's across the
Mhm.
street from the Coliseum.
Yeah,
So, you know, I got comfortable with that part of Oakland,
sure.
you know.
And it's
I
easier
sat,
than
yeah,
most outsiders think would be a place to get comfortable. It's
yeah,
easy to get comfortable there.
yeah,
You
yeah.
know,
It is.
um, I think that's another thing about our show is that
Mm,
we are both not. I mean, even intimidated. It's not even the word. It's not even close to that. It's like we're both comfortable in places that most people would be intimidated by. It's these are places populated with people,
yeah,
and when you go there and you're just people, uh,
yeah,
there's I don't know. I guess people, the animalistic part of people, are just like dogs who can smell fear. To be able to go into a subject matter or into a place or in among a population of folks where
yeah,
you look like an outsider and just not be one,
yeah.
is I think one of the recipes, and hopefully we can figure out a way to make that crack. Is there an element to the show where we're trying to figure out how to make something crack?
I suppose there is. Expose is exposing close enough to that. I mean, I definitely want to expose people to things,
Hmm.
you know. I mean, Dr. Bob has taught me a lot about opera and classical music, what he would call literate music.
Yeah,
And I definitely try to crack that open for people whenever possible.
sure.
We've had a dude on the show who plays a Stradivarius for a living.
Hmm. There
And
are many
again,
of
like
those.
everybody else,
Yeah,
I can email that guy and he'll respond right away. Hey Pete, it's good to hear from you.
yeah.
So yeah, there's some of that. I think there's some of that. I don't know. Am I answering that fairly for you?
Sure.
Yeah.
Maybe. I mean, the other approach to that question would be uh, how come one thing is successful versus another, which I think we've concerned ourselves with less
Yeah.
because we have approached these topics as being fascinating less than we have as being successful.
Yeah.
We're just as likely to have a small time author with a book that's about such a very particular or very local thing,
Sure.
but it's fascinating. Is
Yeah.
it wildly successful? Not, maybe not,
Yeah.
but we don't care about that.
Yeah. And we've got Kat Connor coming up. And Kat Connor
That's who I was thinking
defines that,
about.
right? And
Yeah.
Kat's super successful.
Yeah.
She's written over a dozen books.
Dozens.
People buy them and
Yeah. And love them.
but yeah, and she's a wonderful person. So yeah, I want to support her. You've brought Pato Milo on the show.
Yeah.
He's the
Same thing.
musician version. Yeah.
He's got a local following that, and it's for what he's doing, he's great at it. And people love it. And people love him.
Yeah.
He also has another job that he makes a
Yeah.
living
Yeah.
doing because that success that fulfills him and a lot of us around him
Hmm.
doesn't afford him the living that he would enjoy because he makes a really good living at his other job. But, hey, I would also like to explore though, how do we, what does somebody do that cracks it open? You know,
Yeah.
how do we get to the point where you have done this art and it makes no sense for you to continue going to your day job anymore?
Yeah. Well, so we had that person on the show the other day, but it's a different thing, but also not hugely known, but gets to do what she wants to do, and that's DC Lee,
Hmm.
you know, and she is adored by her fans. But she has unique access. She's not the main person in those bands, but and I'll put DC into the backup singer category. That is her profession,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But she's not defined by that
Mm-mm.
somehow. And okay, look, it helps to be married to one of the most successful songwriters that has ever walked the earth.
Yeah, it
But
helps.
but she's not defined by that.
No,
So I don't know. What are your thoughts?
no. Her fans also are. She's got. You can't put that category on her if what you pay attention to is the rabidness of her fandom.
Yeah, yeah,
People love her the way that people love a diva,
sure.
not
Yeah,
a backup singer, if we're to define her
right.
with that moniker.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, so, yeah,
And as I see DC Lee, most people are like, "Who's DC Lee?" If they're
yeah,
even listening to the show.
yeah.
But yeah, and is she a backup singer in the Style Council? No. Yes. It's,
Hmm.
she definitely sings her share of songs as lead. But she's not writing them. She's
Yeah,
contributing. She's part of a band. And yeah, so it's interesting. I see. So there's like that hierarchy where she got a little higher up, um, but she's a bigger name in England than she is in America.
yeah.
Yeah. So what
Hmm.
is the difference? And she married well. She married really well.
Yeah. Especially within her industry.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Who would you? I know we've entertained this topic before, but who would you think is the most famous person we've had on the show?
It's hard to say because there's context required, right? Like
Yeah.
we've talked about this, like, do we have we had Ichiro where it's one name and that you're like, oh, I know exactly who that is? Or do you
Hmm.
have to add context? And then you have other people who in their world are the person.
Yeah.
For like David Livermore in the world of cultural intelligence, he's it.
Hmm.
He's it. But if you don't care about cultural intelligence, yeah, look, I got his book right here. One of his books. So if you want to know about culture and cultural intelligence, you know him, and that's as famous as you can possibly be. He gets paid. People pay him to teach them how to do cultural things. So I don't know. We've had presidential candidates on the show. We've had Dan Crenshaw's been on the show. Jack Carr has been on the show. These are
Yeah.
veterans who have done amazing things and have
Colonel
huge
Vindman.
followings. Yeah. 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 I mean, there's all kinds of amazing people. And I guess maybe if you're newsworthy like Vindman was, but
Hmm.
maybe it doesn't last
Dan
as long.
Crenshaw.
Yeah, Dan. I don't know. Who do you think it is?
Yeah. I don't know. It depends who you ask.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
there are certain generations of musicians who would easily say, "Oh, Sly Stone, of course." And then you can
Right.
ask somebody else, "Hey, we had Sly Stone." I remember we had, when um, we were with, oh shucks, what was his name? Doggone it! We had so many people on the show that I can't remember their names. Um, Mick, uh,
Yeah.
when we were with Mick Betancourt, and we said, "Yeah, we had Sly
Yeah.
Stone on the show." He didn't know who he was.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then and I think that is true when you, like you said, there are people who in their world they're at the top,
Mick Gillette. How
but
many
in another
musicians have
world,
been like, oh shit, Mick Gillette, Jesus, that's my
yeah,
guy,
yeah,
Yeah.
And then just in another circle, and in another circle that we are very comfortably ensconced in, people are like, I've never heard of that guy.
Yeah.
You know, so could be a lot of people.
It could be. It could be. There's definitely, I mean, there's a lot of names that have raced through my head, you know, and I can't even like rank them because they're all very, very notable in their own right. But like I said, we've had a Kennedy on the show, you know, and that's pretty, that's pretty ridiculous.
Yeah.
Ray Parker Jr. has been on our show.
Ray Parker Jr. Yeah.
You know, that's pretty damn notable. Almost everybody knows that guy's name.
Yes.
You know, is he famous? Yeah. Is he that kind of famous? I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's someone else who was in my head a second ago. I thought, oh yeah, that person is worth mentioning. I mean, obviously, Andy Summers and Stuart Copeland are worth mentioning because they've done so much stuff.
Right. They were in the biggest band in the entire world.
Yeah.
At that time.
And then you can mention Nathan East.
Yeah.
You know, and again, in his world, wow, you know.
Yeah.
Everybody.
Maybe it gets as big, but it doesn't get bigger in the world that he's in.
Yep. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's hard. It's a little hard to say who that person is because we've had so many people that are so fantastically successful. And yeah, I don't know. You know, one of the things that is interesting though, that that has happened a number of times is without purposefully building this, I have combined people together in some way. One of them is I've met this ambassador he was the ambassador for NATO, and he's worked with basically all the presidencies going back to Johnson, and he's become a friend. He's this older guy, super smart. He's also a PhD, so very, very intelligent, can talk foreign policy for days. And I had another guy who I met. His name's James Rosebush. So Robert Hunter and James Rosebush. And so I'm talking to James. I'd have him on the show. And I said to him off mic, and I'm like, there's a guy I'd love to have you talk to because you're like, you're a Republican. He's a Democrat, but I don't think that's going to matter. I started describing this guy, and he's like, what's that guy's name? And I said, his name's Robert Hunter. And he's like, he lives across the street from me. And I mean, across the street. And he's like, I can see his car every day when I leave my house. Yeah, across the street. And so this is a couple of years now that I've had both these guys bouncing back and forth on the show. And the last time they were on, which is maybe just over a month ago, before we got going, James stops me. He's like, hey, listen, I want you to hear what I'm saying here. We go on walks. We're friends now because of you. You know, and it's not the first time that those coincidences had two totally different dudes. And they're like, oh, that's my mirror across the street, apartment to apartment, you know? And so we have these connections that the world becomes a real small place. Because I didn't try to do that. Like, no, I know him. He lives across the hallway from me, kind of thing.
That's amazing.
And yeah, it is amazing. And I'm just thinking of two times, but there's happened so many times. It's kind of hard to keep track of all the times where it's like, oh yeah, I know him. Yeah. And that connection that happens, just connecting Josh Montz to Sebastian Junger is another opportunity for those guys to get to know each other and build something. And that's an attribute of the show that I think is really, and the thing I think the show has become is just this opportunity machine to network people together, to create opportunities. And, I put energy into that, and I allow other people to do it too. I'm like, book somebody on the show, book them, go ahead and do it. I'll do all the work of setting everything up and hosting.
Yeah.
And some people take me up, some people don't, but
being that conduit is certainly true of the show.
Yeah.
I think the only thing that's missing when people don't is that, not everybody has the desire or the gumption to perform that network function or to understand the value of that network function the way that we tend to or so easily do. And sometimes it works out. I mean, I remember when we visited Tommy McElroy, and we kind of ambushed him with James and Jock early. And he
Yeah.
and James Early hadn't seen each other in quite a long time.
Yeah. 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 Oh,
Probably the last time they saw each other before that was on a tour bus in
yeah.
the
Yeah.
late 80s.
It's good to fix those things, bring
Yeah.
those things together, whether there's animosity or not, just the separation to fix that.
Yeah.
The person I was going to mention, we've not been on the show yet, but we're about to get, and it's about as famous as you can be. But again, when I mention his name, people are like, I don't know who that is.
Yes. Some
So,
people lose their minds at
yeah,
what an amazing, contribution he's had to our childhood,
yeah,
you know, uh, and then other people are like, yeah,
yeah. Well, and then the person was going to say is Jimmy Jam.
yeah,
And not everybody knows who Jimmy Jam is.
right. Or how much of the soundtrack of your life he has contributed.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
I was listening to some of his work the other
He
day,
just celebrated a
and
birthday, by the way. Happy birthday, Jimmy
yeah,
Jam.
happy birthday, Jimmy Jam. Yeah, I'm looking forward to having him on the show and being able to. I'll tell you two more connections we made. So we had DJ Severe, who's our connection to Jimmy Jam.
Yeah.
And when we had DJ Severe on, so I reached out to him because there was a commercial on MLB TV. I was watching the Dodgers. I like the Dodgers. And they had this cool promo they were running on DJ Severe. And I'm like, well, I'll talk to that guy. Let me reach out. And so I reached out and he was smart and he said yes. And so we've become friends.
Yeah.
And then we're like, who do you like? He's like, I like Bryce Vine. All right, I'll reach out. So we reached out to Bryce Vine and boom, those guys now know each other,
Yeah.
and how cool is that?
That is cool.
And then man, the Dodgers do this incredible thing on Tuesday nights, Taco Tuesday. They have a mariachi band play at the stadium, and it is incredible. And for those who don't know, like you have to understand, there are a lot of Mexican heritage folks at
Yeah.
the games any day of the week. And when
Yes.
that mariachi band play, and the mariachi band is incredible. They know exactly what they're doing. They're called Mariachi Garibaldi. And the guy who sings is Jamie Cuellar. And he knows exactly what to do. He's got 90 seconds.
Yeah.
And he is getting dudes on their knees and they're looking up at their girls and or they're singing songs where they want to dance together, right?
Yeah.
That's it. Like it's all about love. It's all about being sexy, all about having a great time. And they own that stadium for those 90 seconds. And they get to do it several times through the game because the whole Dodgers game thing is a giant production. John knows all about this too. But man, so I'm like, Severe, you got to know the Mario. He's like, I have to know that guy because the more I know him, the more I can sync what I'm doing with what he's doing, And it's just all of these little connections. Our stupid little show, in some tiny way, a little bit of mortar that makes the Dodger experience a little bit better because now DJ Severe and Jamie Cuellar know each other.
Mm. Yeah, that's pretty satisfying.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Okay.
What else you want to get into, man? We've been doing this almost an hour already.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that's that can either be a good place to leave off, or what's next?
Well, I got to make sure we mention my buddy Brian. So,
yeah, no kidding.
He was on the show a couple weeks ago. His name's Brian Fuller. He's rowing across the Atlantic Ocean, or he was until a couple of days ago. They took off on the 2nd of June, 2024. They got delayed a day by weather, and that's fine because weather's crazy. And they got going and almost instantly started having some mechanical problems with the rowing apparatus. It basically rolls on like rollerblade wheels. They've got some extra ones, but they're supposed to last. They do a lot of rowing when you're rowing across the ocean.
Yeah.
And so
not his first time, by the way.
Not his first time going across the ocean. He's going a way that's never been done before, though, this time. And so him and the crew looked at the crumbled wheel and were like, what do we want to do? I mean, we can fix this thing, but we're not even 50 miles in. We've already blown one up. So they fix it. And it's pretty much decided that because they only have 3 in the hold, so they're not going to make it very far if this keeps happening. I think it's going to keep happening. And so sure enough, on Brian's next shift, he blows the wheel out, and they're like, that's it. We got to turn around. So they turn around and then they get into some heavy weather, and that heavy weather fouls their freshwater pump. In a way that is going to be a problem. So they're already committed to going back and like fixing the wheels and getting back on the road or the ocean again. So they're headed back. They do a loop and they're moving.
Well,
More
by the
heavy
way,
weather.
so there's
Yeah.
some weather, and they started off thinking, let's outrun this weather, and then they had to turn back around into it.
Yeah, yeah. And so now they're in it, and
Yeah.
then the electrical system breaks.
Of course.
And so the circuit pops, which is doing its job. It keeps everything on board, but they have to have electricity, and everything's been redone professionally. It's just not a lack of maintenance. This is just, you went to the professionals, they all new solar panels, all everything, but everything there. You have to understand, if they aren't beaconing out, they are invisible to the ships, and there are a lot of ships out there. And
yes,
it might seem like you could see a giant rowing boat that's yellow, but it's too dangerous. And yes, they could navigate via sextant. Brian, of course, took lessons on pulling that sextant up and navigating and everything, but it was too much to not have electricity. And so then they had to call the Coast Guard. Not an easy call for Brian, because that boat is not inexpensive. So they had to abandon the boat and get helicoptered out of the Atlantic Ocean. Yeah. And so first thing I want to say is I'm super proud of Brian. Not an easy decision to make. They didn't do foolish things, because you don't need to die doing this, and so they made the right call to turn around. They made the right call to get back and get fixed and get going again and try to restart. That's not going to happen this year. But then when the time came, he made the even harder choice, because he's the captain. It's his decision. He's like, yep, we're going to call the Coast Guard. The Coast Guard was great. Those guys were following them, and they're like, we want one of your guys as life preservers, because they want to have that, hanging on our wall. We think you guys are super cool. So what Brian has built is incredible. And when you do hard things happen to you, and that's it's all right. So just my encouragement to Brian, and I know he doesn't need my encouragement, but I love him. I believe in him. I'm so proud of him. He stood. Look, everybody thinks they're going to be the hero when the adversity comes, but when you come and the choice is, I have to abandon this $50,000 boat in the ocean with no expectation at that time of getting it back. That's the courage that you have to stand in front of and say, yeah, we're going to do this, instead of doing some fool thing like trying to row that thing back and exposing the people that you're with to risk, because they'll probably do it if you tell them to do it, but he didn't. He said, nope, it's time to rescue. It's time to do that. So the end of the story is that a total giant outpouring of support has come, and they found someone who will go out and look for the boat at its last known location, and for a reasonable amount of money is going to bring that thing back if they can find it, which they expect them to find it. So I just wanted to tip my cap to Brian. Give a cap. Thank you, sir. You're my hero, Brian. You're a badass, and I think the world of you. And I know that when 2025 comes around, you're going to give that Atlantic Ocean something to think about. So I'm proud of you, because hard things are hard, and you're harder than those things.
Well said.
Yeah. So what did you want to close on after that?
Nothing after that.
Nothing after that.
Good going, Brian. Please continue.
I'm gonna roll these credits. Stand by. Hey, thanks for watching the show. I really appreciate it. Right here, you can subscribe. Please do that. It makes the show grow. Hit that notification bell so you know which incredible guest is coming up next. Down below is the PayPal link. You can put a small subscription in. That is an enormous help. All that money goes right back into the show. And then right up over here are the next episodes you should listen to, curated by yours truly. Thank you so much for watching the Break It Down Show.